patriarchy and the myth of women's empowerment in South Asia. So today, in this whole 3-day conversation, this is the only plenary session we have designed for the women's empowerment. Women lead the world, right? I think all the women will agree with me on this. So looking very, very forward to this plenary session. For this session, we have Mahsa bin Khaled, former member of Parliament Bangladesh, as our moderator. And the speakers are the Shama Obaid, Organizing Secretary, Bangladesh National Party, Vidya Amrit Khan, Deputy Managing Director, Desh Garments Limited, Bangladesh, Mariam Nasir, Director General of Quality Assurance, Ministry of Education, Maldives, Kamakshi Watson, Vice President and Director of Academic Programs, Tilottama Foundation, India. And last but not the least, Dr. Erin Watson, Managing Director, Baker & York, and Board Director, Council on Australia and Latin America Relations at Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia. Thank you, everyone. Hope you'll enjoy the session.
Good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I have a very tight schedule, 50 minutes I have to end. So I would ask my distinguished guests to be very precise and short. We'll have a lot of interaction in between. So just today's topic is the shackled privilege of patriarchy and myth of women's empowerment in South Asia. When there's a perception in South Asia that women are just to be fed inside home, and the men are going to take care of the family and have a career. But it has been changing. Now, especially in Bangladesh, we feel that Bangladesh is becoming a champion on empowerment of women. Our government have been very interested to empower women, and today we have the champions with us, not only in Bangladesh. We have guests from India, from Maldives. So we are going to ask them questions. We are going to know something, how they did their hard work and came where they are right now. So first, I'm going to start with Vidya. I know Vidya for a long time, family friend, and I know that she is a lawyer, she's a barrister, but in between, like when her father passed away, she took over her garments factory, his business. I believe your brother and your mother was very skeptical about you taking care of the factory because it's a huge responsibility, and you were very young that time. So my question is, some people think that, oh, Vidya, she got a business, all ready-made business, like you didn't need to work hard to get where you are. So can you just tell us like your struggle and what happened then?
Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everybody who is present here today. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Normally, I will say this, that I am not one to agree to being generally on a gender-sided panel. I don't like talking on women's empowerment, all of that, because multiple reasons. It's the same reason I don't like Women's Day. What is there to celebrate? What is there to distinguish? Why are we not on an equal platform? The title today got my attention, The Shackled Privileges of Patriarchy and the Truth of Women's Empowerment in South Asia. And I thought that was a very interesting topic. It brings in context religion, it brings in context the gender-based biases that we have, and most importantly, it talks about the social and cultural aspect or impression that one has of women. Now, to answer the question that you have asked me, yes, I was very young. I was 18 years old when my father passed away. My mother was 42, which is how old I am now, and she took over. So, at about 24 years ago, her being 42 and taking over this massive conglomerate of industries was not easy either for her. At the same time, yes, it's been a great privilege, but with privilege comes responsibilities and duties and challenges. And of course, being in the garment industry, my father was the pioneer of the garment industry, of the 100% export-orientated garment industry in Bangladesh. And that brings about great responsibility also. I am twice elected from the opposition, director of the BGMEA. The first time I did my elections, I was 28 years old, and that I think was purely because of privilege. They came to me because who I was. And then, of course, I think they wanted, with the one woman candidate that they had among 27 people at the BGMEA running elections in an industry which used to be 80% of women workers, I think it was more of a token. I think they needed a woman to be on the board. Right now, we have 35 directors and we have 3 women directors on the board. So I think, you know, when we talk about women empowerment or gender equality and all of that, and then we bring in religion. As a Muslim, as a practicing Muslim, of course, religion is a factor, and a lot of misconception as far as religion is concerned. In our in Islam, they say that, you know, or no, actually, the clerics, the priests, the people who preach religion, they say that women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do that, women should get less. And yes, of course, there's Sharia law which says that women should get less than men. But that's not where it ends, though. As one would know, and I'm no expert on religion, one would know that, you know, in a country, our Prophet ﷺ, he married one of his wives who was a businesswoman, who was older than him, and that didn't stop him. But today, if somebody does that, they will say, no, this is not a good thing, it's not a religious thing to do. So honestly speaking, it's not religion that stops us. It's culture, it's society, and it's some very insecure men, I would like to say, with all disrespect. I think women, like I said, you know, yes, of course, physically, sometimes we are not able to do the same thing as men do. I'm not a feminist as such, but I believe in equal rights, I believe in equal pay, but I still think that men should open the door for a woman when they enter. I think men should still say ladies first, because that's about manners, it's about how you've been brought up, it's about education at home. And it's not religion. Don't bring in religion. If anything, it can be politics, but it's culture and it's society. And honestly, the other day my brother-in-law from America, he lives in New York, and he follows me on social media, and he said, "You're doing very well." I said, "Oh, thank you," because I have been very busy with the BGMEA on several occasions. We've traveled abroad, and he said, "It's very nice to see that amongst all the men, you're the only woman." And it's true. I've been to conferences where they've said that the BGMEA, to the president, they've said, only one woman. And of course, I've made jokes to make the men look better, that I am equal to all the other men. It only takes one like me to match to the number of men there are in this room. So, honestly, if you ask me, I don't see myself any different from men. Yes, of course, probably as far as security is concerned, I wouldn't go out walking at 3 a.m. in the morning as a man can. But then again, what does that teach us? That it's about society, it's about culture. We have a woman Prime Minister. Our Honorable Prime Minister is a woman, the Speaker of the House is a woman, we have ministers who is a woman, and of course, our moderator here, she was a member of the Parliament also. So when you are the Prime Minister, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, it's a position that one respects. So women empowerment, yes, of course, it's a bit tricky there because society has allowed a woman to be the Prime Minister, but the respect of that position is far greater than the gender that is respected. So I'll finish because I think I'm going over time. I was very young. I was very single. I got married very late, and you know, everybody was very curious that why my mother is not marrying me off. But lo and behold, as a Bangladeshi, I got married at 37. I went to Chittagong by myself when I was 28 years old, and I looked after my father's garment factory, although I had an older brother. So I think I've broken many norms, and I think, you know, it's a question of being confident in doing it yourself and not really bothering about what society has to say or what culture has to say, and it's definitely not religion which is stopping us from being where we are today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vidya. We are going to come back to you again to listen to you. We are going to move to Ms. Mariam Nasser just to listen to Maldives, because Maldives is a Muslim country too, and the men are considered the household head in the country. So recently, the UN expert actually applauded Maldives' strong commitment to gender equality in law and policy. But they want to see the implementation. So we just want to know that Maldives, they are implementing, or you feel there's a lot more to do?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Fortunately, as the moderator mentioned, we are 100% Muslim country, so we have only one religion, that is Islam. That is one advantage for us. Of course, when we talk about gender disparities, I can say it is still there, but it is not that much, and we are, from the government side, we are also trying a lot to decrease or to reduce the gender disparities. Of course, in our schools, opportunities are provided for the girls and boys, equal opportunities are provided, even higher education, even jobs, and recently the government has passed a law which says that the local councils, 33% should be given to the women. So government is also doing a lot to empower women, and I can say we don't see that much discrimination, because when we are working in the government, and I have been working in the schools for a long period of time, and working in the ministry also, I don't think that we have that much discrimination, but maybe we do have to focus on that. So when we talk about the SDG goal 5, goal 4, we are also focusing on that, providing quality education. When we talk about quality education, we focus on equality and equity. So all the boys and girls in the schools are provided same opportunities to perform. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to you again. So I'm going to go to Dr. Erin Watson-Lane now. Just now you have told me that you have been working with South Asian, especially India. So as an Australian, which is a developed country where you don't see any discrimination and
No.
but I guess it's a developed country, so it's a different module. So what did you experience in India, like when you were like interacting with them? How did you feel? Though we have an Indian guest here, distinguished guest, she's going to talk about that. But still, as a foreigner, living in India, what did you experience?
Thank you. And I actually was going to start by making these exact comments about Australia. I think it would be absolutely wrong of me to get up and just sit here and make observations about South Asia despite my, like I said, a decade of working in and out of South Asia. My partner is Sri Lankan.
And do you feel it's a myth because it's saying that South Asian women empowerment is a myth, but it's not. So do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to start by saying is that in Australia we do not have this right. And if anything, what I would say is as countries develop, take some lessons for Australia and where we've got this wrong. And try to build a system for women that works for them as much as possible. So in Australia, we still have around a 20% pay gap between men and women. We have at least one woman killed every week by their partner, by their domestic partner. This is an epidemic in Australia. It's a really, one woman every week in a country of 24 million people is pretty bad for a developed country. Childcare is completely unaffordable. It's structured around a system where private companies can both reap the rewards from government subsidies and by maxing out the private sector. To give you an idea, to put your child into a childcare centre at the full rate in Australia is around $30,000 Australian per year. It's about $22,000 a year. You do get some of that back, but it's incredibly expensive given that the average wage in Australia is $80,000 and the median for women is around $25,000, $30,000 a year anyway, because overwhelmingly women continue to work part-time. They overwhelmingly, the data tells us this, they all do the unpaid labour at home still. And what feminism, I don't like to discredit feminism at all, but what I do like to do is look at it critically and say, okay, well, what has women's empowerment done for women in Australia? We're now expected to work full-time for less money plus run the household. So how has that benefited women at all? So we've opened up all of these opportunities for women, but overwhelmingly what we haven't done is shift the domestic balance with men. So it's not uncommon these days to meet a man who is actually, the house dad and does look after the kids. We have a lot of women in very powerful roles in Australia. My daughter goes to school in the middle of the city. And what a city school in Australia means is that you've got two people who are working, and sometimes the woman is the partner in the law firm and they're the doctors and they're the ones. So men take up more of the household, and it's a cultural thing about our school, which comes with an element of privilege as well, that we have a much more gender balance in our day-to-day lives. So I just want to start by saying we don't have this right by any means, and I think that it's, my own experience of being someone who has been in politics, has been in the media, who is a business owner and an academic, is that I still face cultural and institutional barriers every single day, and I'm a white woman from a relatively privileged family. So, when I look at a country like Australia, which is so multicultural, I'd probably say one of the most successful multicultural countries in the world. We have a Muslim Indian living next to someone who's a Hindu, next to an Israeli, next to a white Australian, next to a Sinhalese, next to a Tamil, someone from the UAE, and everybody can live together in relative harmony, and that's a really good thing about Australia. But we have this intersectional discrimination that means that wherever you sit in that system, you still face really significant cultural barriers and institutional barriers as well. But having said that, I mentioned my partner's, Sri Lankan, born in Australia, but parents came out to Australia, and in one generation, the social mobility you can have as a migrant is extraordinary. Our current Prime Minister actually grew up in Housing Commission flats, which also says something about Australia, but I'd say it's not the norm. So that's where I'm coming from. And when I first went to India was in 2012 as an intern, and I had a pretty confronting experience where I had to really kind of grapple with as an intern I didn't have any money, so I was sort of living off about 150 rupees a day, which 10 years ago actually went quite far. And it was really challenging coming to terms with some of the things I observed. I was there during the December 16, 2012 gang rape of Nabaya, so that was really challenging. And it made me really understand where women are coming from in a country like India. But, you know, as an Australian woman, what I would say is when we're looking at development in the region, we can learn from the mistakes that Australia has made. I think there's a lot that you get right in this region as well, particularly if you can wrap, you know, concepts like decent work around it, so things like childcare arrangements, but making sure that worker rights and all of those things are protected is a good thing. Yeah, so I'll leave it there, but and leave it to my Indian colleague here to give remarks on the actual country. But we don't have it right, and there's a lot that we can talk about personal experiences. As you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what that feels like.
Okay. Thank you, Erin, Dr. Erin. We are going to go to Shamabad now. Obviously, I have to ask something about politics. Like, you come from a political background.
My favorite subject.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
You're talking about it every day, but this is a little bit different. You come from a political background. People say when somebody comes from a political background, it's easier to get into politics and do well. Is it true, or it's same for everybody? And I see young people, whenever I go to the universities or colleges or interact, young girls, they're not interested in politics. And what do you think? Why do you think it is happening now?
Thank you, Mezabeen, and good morning to all. And we have a wide spectrum of women leadership on stage today. So that is very, very assuring that we are heading towards women empowerment. So basically, well, the title of this session actually says that although we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. And since I am in politics, yes, I am from a political family, as you are too. But the thing is that you can come from a political background, you can have legacy, but at the end of the day, it's your hard work, your talent, your dedication to your country and your people that will take you forward. It's not, the legacy can just go so far. And so that is very important, and it is regardless of gender, I think. It is not only women, it's for everybody, that's the same thing. And the thing that I wanted to mention is that women are climbing mountains, you know, they're CEO of companies, they're leading countries, they're prime ministers, presidents, flying airplanes and whatnot. But still, we think that in this patriarchal society, we still have some barriers that we need to overcome. Since I'm in politics, I would like to emphasize that, you know, despite the progress, our society remains highly patriarchal, and the social and economic rights for women and gender equality needs to be addressed now and needs to be addressed as soon as possible. We see, like in South Asia, we have our share of women leadership. In Bangladesh, we have had women leadership for last 35 years, 40 years. We have many women in ministerial position, in parliament members, in bureaucracy, in different areas, in corporate level. But still, I personally feel that at some point, there is a bar. We hit a bar where women are not allowed in any decision-making process. Women are not allowed to have their own voice. So that is something that we need to break. As like Vidya was talking about garments, I mean, I think in Bangladesh garments industry or the RMG sector have revolutionized the women's empowerment. The number of women, the 80% of women, I think, 80% of workers in this industry are women. So in that regards, Bangladesh has come a long way. But when we look at, you have been in parliament before, when we look at our parliament, we have reserved seats, 50 reserved seats for women. And I believe although these reserved seats allow women to be in politics, but at the same time, it actually keeps women away from competing directly from their constituencies. So that is something we need to address. The political parties in Bangladesh, regardless which one it is, their mindset has to change. The awareness has to be there that we need to promote women, because women, we have seen, can work much harder than a man. If a woman is in a leadership, there is less corruption, there is less bureaucratic hassles. Women work from their heart. They actually can do much more for the country and for the people than any man around. So women have to be, they should be able to give that chance, that ability for all the political parties. And you know that all the political parties have a requirement of 30% women participation, which I don't think any of the parties in Bangladesh have done that yet. So that is something that we need to address. And another thing we need to address is there is a debate that we need to think about, that having women in powerful positions, does that allow women empowerment in root level? Because I'm an organizing secretary of Bangladesh Nationalist Party. I go to every village, I go to a lot of places, I see a lot of women trying to get their voices heard, but and it's regardless of party affiliation, it can be from any political party. They are trying to get their voices heard, but again they are hitting a barrier where the men are taking over and they are not allowed to speak up, and they're not allowed to raise their voice. So that is something that we need to address very seriously. And I personally think that we need to get away with this selected seat system, and we need to have direct women participation in the parliament, which is very important. And another thing is that we need to address the violence, violence over women and children, because in last year, on one side we are seeing women politicians, women MPs, women ministers, but on the other side we are saying in 2021 there were 328 child marriages in Bangladesh. So that is something that we don't expect, we don't deserve. So that's a issue that we need to look at. And the amount of, even in every environmental hazard, like after COVID, women are worldwide, and including Bangladesh, women were affected mostly. The girl child who dropped out from their schools all over the country did not go back to school after COVID, and there is no plan for the families to send their girls back. So what's happening? The child marriages are increasing, and so education, they're not getting the education that they deserve and that they're required. So that is something that needs to be addressed seriously. So that is the main thing that actually I wanted to, I know I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to mention that it is very important that we support women's leadership. Sometimes, I know there are women in the audience, but sometimes we ourselves are the women, we don't support each other. It's very important that we support each other. So we have to support women's leadership. Empowers like small women holders. Like even we see that Bangladesh is a country where there is RMG at one side, and we have a huge number of agriculture, a huge number of people who are involved in agriculture. We have seen that women who are involved in agriculture have done much better with small loans than men in their own fields. So we need to promote that and fund women's organizations. There are so many national, international women organizations working for the women and for the underprivileged. So we need to, and the government can help, the private sector can help do that. And also invest in women's education and health. That's the most important thing that we need, that any government can do for their population. Especially in Bangladesh, more than the half population is women. So it is very important that we invest in girls' child education and women's health to actually ensure a better society in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shama. I just want to add something with that. Mindset of men, because I remember recently we had a small group of MPs, men MPs and women MPs, though I don't like to say men and women MPs.
I also
MPs
don't
are
like
MPs.
that, yeah.
So when we discussed about gender equality, the main thing was they were very aggressive, and they said, first you take care of the household, then you talk about other things. So that is the mindset of the men.
When we stop celebrating Women's Day and start celebrating Men's Day, that day men's outlook will change. Okay,
True,
so we
true.
have to stop doing that. And another thing is that you asked a question earlier that why do young women getting away from politics?
Yes.
And that's a very important thing. It's not only women, young population is getting away from politics because, first of all, I don't think, unfortunately, they don't see any proper role model that they can follow at the moment.
No, I don't agree with you.
No,
but
I'm
yeah.
just saying, let me
Yeah.
finish. And then politics, you have to agree, although we belong to different political platforms, but you have to agree that politics itself has become very violent and unpredictable for any gender. So that is something actually, and proper talent, proper ability is not ensuring that any person, may it girl or a boy, will reach to his or her destination in politics.
And we are not even grooming these girls.
Right, exactly. So they are not getting groomed.
Next leaders.
Absolutely,
Yes.
they're not getting groomed, and again, they are getting shackled by patriarchy.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shoma. Now we are going to come to the last distinguished guest, Kamaski Wasson. She is a researcher, and I believe your research institute do a lot of work on gender violence, violence on women, and you have been working on this, doing research and a lot of programs. So do you feel like in India, the laws and the policies, whichever are there, it's enough to protect them? Another thing is, another question to you, like we have seen #MeToo going around in India. It was everybody was very vocal about it, and we saw celebrities also coming out, talking about their experiences. So how do you think this #MeToo movement took over India?
Thank you, dear moderator, and good morning, dear distinguished guests and my friends. First of all, I would like to thank my dear friend, Mrs. Zillur Rahman, and the entire team of Center of Governance Studies for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be here among all of you and to be here on this very great panel. So thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I would like to start, as the title says, there is a myth for the women empowerment, but I think the major myth is that the woman needs to be empowered. I don't think that's true, because women are already empowered. Women just need absolute and good chances, good opportunities to prove themselves. We are already empowered. When we are born, I know there are few areas in India or other South Asian countries or even other areas also where women are not considered, and since birth they are told that you have to be at home, you can't do this, you can't do that, and there's always a man dominance on women. But with that thing also evolving around, women themselves become strong on their own. They get this thinking that, okay, if they're not going to believe me, but I believe myself, maybe one day when I grow up I can change the world, right? And if given good chances, I can definitely change and bring a major reform. So coming back to what you said, like from being associated with the foundation, first of all I would say I'm very much grateful that I am at this foundation, because I also had many dreams, and I never knew that I would be at this position, sitting here, talking in front of you. So this is a great opportunity for me. And if I can do this, I think many women can also do, like many people watching me, especially the young girls who aspire to be young leaders, can do this. And when we talk about women, the gender violence and all these aspects, I think, yes, there are some areas where domestic abuse and all these verbal abuses for women are still there. There are still areas all across the world where women are brutally abused, and they are shown that, okay, this is not your place, you should just keep your mouth shut, you can't speak that, you can't talk about this. But do we really think that women are that much like so minute that they cannot speak up for themselves? It's just that we are not providing them good platforms. If I am here, if I am given opportunity, I am speaking on this subject, and if a woman sitting right next or maybe behind that screen watching me knows that, okay, if this girl is talking about this issue and doing her job greatly, maybe this will change, this will spark a mind there. Maybe that girl watching me right now can say, okay, if she can do it, I can do it too. And coming back to the Me Too movement, I feel yes, but I feel that the Me Too movement was much needed, but also it did had its complications, because people generally, they took it another way also. But the Me Too movement was seen in a very massive way, not just in India. There were other areas also where people, came up, even celebrities came up, even other people from the business background or other distinguished areas came up and talked about the issue. This shows that how the women are shown that, okay, you are not good enough and you can't do anything. I feel that if I talk about the other women sitting on the panel next to me, we all have done something great, and that's why we all are here. And we are here to change something. We all have done great work. Each of us has a story. It didn't happen like that. We all did our hard work. And when I talk about my foundation, the Lotma Foundation, we focus on gender equality. Gender equality is a key focus area. I personally, when I go anywhere, we work with different embassies in Delhi. I personally take I personally go and meet all these ambassadors, and when they see me, they are like, how this single woman is working across Delhi and just, bringing change. But I feel that if you have that much of power, if you have that much of determination, you can do anything. Women, if you consider yourself as one, there's a term, one woman army. If I talk about other women, respected women sitting here, we all are here because we have this ability to shine, right? It's just not that if you wear hijab or I wear something else, I wear, what is my ethnicity? It doesn't matter. What we are seeing currently in Iran is something which is, when I was watching in the news, it was very, very devastating to know. But the way women came up and, fought for themselves was very, very, very strong. And the way they, and it didn't affect Iran only, it affected all the nations, that spark which that one country made on other nations was quite massive. The women, how they were feeling and how, all the consequences which came along actually sparked the other nations. And when we talk about women empowerment, we should understand that women should be given should be given appropriate chances in the decision making. As she said, that when we talk about women in the political background, when we talk about the women in other, diplomacy and public policy, and I don't think there is any specific place left where there is no woman. I feel women are everywhere. Now we are seeing women in the startups. There are women who are running many startups, new startups, and these are running successfully, I meet these women entrepreneurs on a frequent basis, and I communicate with them, and they share their perspective. And you won't get you won't even think for a minute that is she a woman, or if like she a woman doing it? Because see, we have this mindset only men can run things, but I feel women can run the things equally if we are given the same opportunity.
Or maybe better.
Yeah, definitely. Because see, we as women are told to bring people together. We have, since our birth, our parents, especially our mothers, because women generally have a very good relation with their mothers, because they share their experience with their kids. And yes, I think there is also one little misunderstanding which happens, I think, because see, our mothers, what they face, they don't want us to face. So they just like to protect us. Okay, don't do this, don't do that, just be at home, you don't know what the society is all about. But if I would also do the same thing to my child, it won't break the bubble. It would stay the same. And if I would, instead of this, if I would come up and I would talk about, see, if you have dreams, if you want to do something great, don't be judged or don't be misjudged by the fact that you are a woman and we are living in a male-dominant society nowadays. Nowadays it's a male-dominant society, but we should believe that women and men are equally important. I would love to see women in the armed forces, and even in politics. We don't see much MPs and women MPs, I'm sorry for talking about women and men MPs, but yeah, we don't see much women MPs, There is a need to add women in every field and in decision making, because wherever it comes to decision making, even at our homes we see, when we talk about a family, when women are given chances to make decisions. Don't you think women think about everyone in the family? They just not think about themselves. Sometimes they even give up their own things and just think about the kids or their partner, even their parents. They even give up their own things for the sake of the family. So women can be great decision makers and change makers. Also, there is a need to add women in the legislative bodies, because this can bring a lot of change in the future law policies or maybe new interventions. And this can actually aggravate and bring a lot of change. Lastly, I just want to say, we at the Lotma Foundation, I had the privilege when the Afghanistan issue happened, I had the privilege to communicate with these former ministers, these former governors who were ruling the country at that moment. And the way they shared their journey, you'll have tears in your eyes. You'll understand that what all they face, like literally, this is like and when we talk about role model, yes, you are right, because if women are not given chances, how will there be women role models? If we will see at least from out of 100, if we'll see at least 80% women sitting at different places, obviously there would be girls watching. They'll understand, okay, if this number of women are here, maybe I can be there one day. So I don't think, at large, I just want to say, there is no need to empower women. Women are already empowered. They just need right chances. They just need right appreciation and recognition. And obviously, we have many great dignitaries sitting here. I know they are hearing us out. And I hope for change. I hope our talk can change mindsets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamakshi. I agree with you, and I wish our today's panel we had few men, because they needed to be addressing these issues too, and we need to know how they feel. Yes, now we're going to go to the audience to get some questions, and our distinguished guests are going to give their answers. Can we have a mic? And please state your name and the person who is going to give you the answer. You need to.
Very good morning to all of you. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Sylvie, founder of Artpedia Global, a non-profit organization working for...
Please keep it very short. Yeah, we'll take 2 or 3 questions.
Women empowerment and gender equality. I'm myself working for women empowerment and gender equality. So my question is that we all believe in women empowerment and gender equality. In fact, changes are happening. then why Bangladesh has ranked 152 among 170 countries in Global Women Peace and Security Index, which measures the country's status in ensuring women's safety, security, and justice. And India has, according to Global Gender Gap, India has ranked 135 among 146 in 2022. Then what are the reasons behind these lackings, or behind staying at the bottom of the indexes? And why don't we all talk about domestic violence and child marriages, which are happening at the very root level? What are the reasons and what necessary steps the government and private sector should take at this very moment? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a second question? We'll answer all together, once we have the questions. Second question, yes, can he have the mic, please?
I have two questions. Before the question, I would like to thank all the women around the world for doing a great job from bottom to top. So now my first question is, the men talk about men rights, and the women talk about men and men rights, but there is a gender who is not woman and men, that's called third gender. Should we talk and think about also them? And the second question is, in our South Asian, especially Bangladesh, we have seen sometimes that a man is forced by a woman, but he can't do anything. So should there is a law should be made for the men as well? Thank you.
And last question, please. Just a question, no comments. Just a question, because we don't have time.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Colonel Ashraf. Now working, a retired principal, and now working with parenting. So when we go into parenting issues, we find that actually mothers are more important. And if you are saying so, that everywhere the number of women is less, I was principal of English medium schools. Look at the English medium schools. Out of 110 teachers, 100 teachers are women. So it is as appropriate in appropriate places. Actually, we are going into contradiction. This is coupling. This is mutual. One complementing with the other, not fighting, like feminism. Some people are using feminism
Sir, can we have the question, please, because we don't have time.
All right. The question is, feminism is spread by some as a conflicting item. And as Madam Bidya has expressed, it is not that, it is rather cooperation and taking the chance and giving the way. So how do you mitigate the conflict between these two?
Thank you. So we don't have enough time. I'll give 1 minute to each of the distinguished guests to close up and answer their questions, and then we'll finish the session.
Divide the answers so we don't have to answer all the questions.
Whichever answer you want to give, but you have to close with the answer, okay?
Can I address now the first question?
Yes, please do.
This lady. She mentioned domestic violence and torture and violence on women in general, in root level. That's what I was telling in my speech, that although we have powerful women in powerful places, that doesn't ensure that women's safety all over the country or in this region, because we see that in last year 3,703 incidents of torture and sexual violence happened over children and women in Bangladesh. And the reason that this domestic violence is increasing, the rape cases are increasing, because if you look at the judiciary, you'll see pending cases, rape cases, years after years, which is not seeing any light of the day anytime soon. So that's one of the reasons, that lack of rule of law and lack of judiciary and lack of addressing these rape cases properly. And unfortunately, I will conclude with this. Unfortunately, we live in a very polarized society. Not everything is politics. If a girl is raped, we should not use that incident politically. We should address that issue as a rape case, and whoever is did that thing has to be brought to justice, no matter which political background or social background that person comes from. So that is very important that we need to remember, because for example, it's very unfortunate if a girl gets raped and you find out that that girl belongs to a particular political background or might support a political party. That girl, the other political party will not support that girl. That is very unfortunate in Bangladesh that's happening now. So that has to change. We have to have a consensus that no matter what, violence, wrong is wrong, violence is violence, rape is rape, and a person who is doing wrong has to come to justice. Thanks.
Absolutely. Shama, thank you. Can I ask Kamakshi to give your closing comments?
Thank you so much. I'll answer your question, dear lady, in the Indian context, because I don't think it's just in Bangladesh this is happening. I think there are things all over the world, and if I am from India, I'll just share the context from India, perspective of India. And yes, there are still every day we hear about rapes in India, different parts of India, and domestic abuse. Women are facing so much, especially in the village areas, the areas where there are not much facilities available for women, not much rights available for women, because they are just subjected to things which are, they are told that you just have to be at home, you can't do anything, right? And if we talk about the domestic abuse and how the things after the abuse happens to the victim, I think it should be changed, because the victim still feels that, maybe I won't get justice, because the judicial system still needs many reforms. There are minute holes in the judiciary system, and as I told before also, that we need women we need women in the legislative bodies, because through this they can share their perspective. They can also come up and support these women victims. And when we talk about domestic abuse, yes, there are days when women are unheard, and not days, but like every time the plea of the women are unheard. But when I talk about, when I'm here, I think we need more such discussions, because yes, there are discussions happening on women empowerment, but the specific issues need to be answered, need to be taken up.
Thank you, Kamakshi.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
We'll go to Ms. Mariam Nasser now.
Thank you. When we talk about gender disparities, I think most of the time it's the women who are affected. So still, from all the conversations, I think still we need to provide higher education for all the girls, not some girls. So all the girls need to get higher education, and we need to provide more job opportunities. We need to protect them from violence and abuse. We need to provide economic activities, include them in power and decision making at all levels. All these things will help us to reduce gender disparities. So it's a humble request from us, from the women, to count us, because our involvement also matters. So before I conclude, I just want to say something relating to this conference hall. When we look at this hall, we can see how many women are here participating. Of course, this panel is all women, so I am also proud to be here, but still we can see how many women are here. So we know where we are from this hall itself. But we can see few women here representing and talking about their concerns and contributing. So I salute to those ladies who are here. And I also thank CGS, right?
Yeah. CGS.
Yeah, for giving this opportunity for the ladies here. So, of course, we have noticed that we ladies, we need to change our mind. We need to think. We need to make use of the opportunities we get. We need to seek for more opportunities, and we need to make use of those opportunities. Also, we need to work together, support each other, help each other, and move on. We also can do wonders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mariam. Now I'll go to Dr. Erin, but you have only 1 minute to...
I will be very quick. Look, I think at the heart of all of this and everything we've been talking about is about economic security, because as women are more economically secure, they're able to shift dynamics in families, they're able to renegotiate their positions within families, and it means that they have the ability to make choices. So whether it's leaving a difficult scenario, whether it's getting access to education, making choices about having less children, all of this comes back to providing women with economic security. And so there's a lot of work going on around the world in this space, whether it's around digital financial inclusion and other things, but there is research that tells us this, that if we can look at economic security, it completely shifts this dynamic that puts power back there for women. Now, just quickly, if I want to walk home in Melbourne, I don't do that after dark. So it's also, we have these incidences, right? Even in Australia, we can't get around. Economic autonomy in Australia for women is why women can't leave these homes. So this is across the world, it's not just in South Asia, it all comes back to giving women economic security.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidya.
To sum it up very quickly, two things. One, education. And by education here, I'm not talking generally just about schools, but it would be education from home. So every parent has to go back to their homes and tell their sons that women are just as equal. So that's the start, that's just the beginning. Treating, the parents have to treat the two children the same. And then of course, education then transfers onto the schools. Schools have to teach the boys and the girls that, you know, you're both on equal footing. Then of course comes law, legal rights, and as far as Bangladesh is concerned, of course all the rules and regulations are in place, but then it's about enactment. We spoke about rape, we spoke about other incidents, but then if you have a law in place and if it's enforced, then you don't need anything else. It doesn't matter whether you are from either of the ruling political parties. You just have the law and you enact it. Of course, in order to improve the position of women in our society, given that culturally we are not made to feel the same, there might be certain rules and regulations that may be enforced in institutions and governing bodies, whereby they might say that a certain percentage of women must be present on the board or something like that. I think there is such a rule in Norway where they say that number of women on the board must be equal to the men. I think I may be wrong, but there is one country. So that's the other thing. So initially education, law, and then finally I would like to say this, that women ourselves, we need to stop thinking that we should be given chances or given equal opportunities or any of this victimization that we do on ourselves. We should just take the opportunity. We should just demand what we should be given. And I don't think it's a question of asking permission from anybody, because, for example, when you sit on a board or executive board or a committee, it doesn't matter. Why is it that, who is the other man sitting next to me, and why do I need his permission? So to all the women out there, and there are not many in this room, unfortunately, I would say that, step out of your homes, step out of your comfort zone, and don't wait for any man to give you permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidya. But I think the audience are mostly men. It's better because they need to listen. So I feel the women empowerment still in work in progress, but we should give credit to the determined women, not only to stand for their rights, but to fight to the very end to achieve their larger women empowerment goals. So I like to thank all our distinguished guests to be here, and the organizers to do this nice morning session, which we had to get up really early. So I think we can finish off at the end with Kamashke's poem on women.
Thank you, dear moderator. She rises from her adversity but never forgets her origin. She learns from her past and chooses to keep going forward, even when her steps get heavy. She transforms her pain and suffering into strength and wisdom. Yes, she may stumble. Yes, sometimes she falls. But just as the sun always rises, so too does a powerful woman. She is equipped with an intuition that guides her course like a compass. She strives to love herself and all that she stands for with a fierce loyalty even when it's difficult. She is not afraid to seek truth even when it hurts. She is passionate and uses her gifts to inspire and spread light and love. With a mind of wonder and a heart of goodness and grit, she is resilient. She refuses to be navigated by fear and doubt. She knows where she's been, where she is, and where she is headed. She uplifts other women and embodies authenticity and humility. She loves deeply, lives with compassion, and is relentlessly unapologetic. She is designed to be admired, not always liked. She is fierce, determined, and unstoppable. She is a powerful woman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a very special guest with us, the Minister of Agriculture of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Dr. Mohammad Abdul Razak MP. But as he had an urgent meeting, so he had to leave the venue. So we are moving to the next session. And next we have a plenary session, and the topic is Curated Growth, the role of ODA and PTA in shaping South Asian economics. And for that session, we have some amazing panelists with us, and they are His Excellency Charles Whiteley, Ambassador of European Union Delegation to Bangladesh; Yoshikazu Kato, Research Fellow, Rakuten Securities Economic Research Institute, Japan; Devor Kank, EU and International Affairs, Political Economy Analysis; Amir Khusru Mahmood Choudhury, former Commerce Minister, Bangladesh; Dr. Nazdin Ahmed, Country Economist, UNDP Bangladesh. And the session will be moderated by Parvez Karim Abbasi, Assistant Professor of Economics, East West University, Bangladesh. And I would like to request everyone to maintain the decorum so that we can start our next session. I would like to request everyone to maintain decorum so we can start the next session. Thank you.
I'm Nazneen.
Yeah, you're going to moderate, right?
No.
No, okay.
No, I'm not. হ্যাঁ কেমন আছেন সরি এটা তো খোলা তো নাও
Paisha? Paisha? Okay, thank you.
Could you please
Purba.
write something here?
Information gap.
আমি জানি speak for hours together আমি জানি তারপর আমরা QA I'm good for you. You're good for even 18 hours, but they get no. Very thin audience. আসলে এই সাইনেবল প্রবলেম থেকে থার্ড আচ্ছা people are tired. Something I have no problem. Okay. You are a researcher. Okay. You are the researcher. Actually, she should set that goal. আমার perspective to political আমার perspective and man of grace. Good morning, everybody. May I have your attention, please? We are on to the last stretch of the race, and I know that everyone's attention is strained. Thank you for the effort. We are at the Bay of Bengal Conference, and last but not the least, a very interesting session awaits us with this very what would I say, ambitious title, Curated Growth, the role of ODA and PTA in shaping South Asian economies. You have already heard that we have a very distinguished panel over here. So one of the advantages of being a moderator is you speak less, but you sound very intellectual and distinguished. So I can take advantage of this. I will not presume to say something on a subject where we have foremost experts. I'll just set the rules on the ground. Roughly each of the discussants will speak for 7 to 8 minutes. I'll just indicate again when there's only 1 minute left of the time. And roughly at the end of our proposed 40 minutes, we are going to open up the floor and we'll take 2-3 questions and then we'll go back to the discussants. But let me set the theme right. First of all, we are talking about ODAs. So everybody knows what ODAs are, but again, if we can just jog our memory so that we basically get this right. So again, this is again a designation which is used by OECD, by the Development Assistance Committee. And again, this is official assistance which is being meant or sent for economic development and social welfare activities. And there are several components to it, and we won't go into the technicalities of this. But again, usually it's rather concessional in character, and depending on the country's stage of economic development, whether it's a least developed country, whether it's a low middle income country or an upper middle income country, also the interest rates and the discount rates also vary. So the idea is the lower in the scale of development you are, the greater the concessions you get. Now, in this case, as of 2019, and you'll have other experts who will give you more recent or more relevant data, $168 billion have come in the form of ODAs, out of which 152 billion have come from largely the OECD club members or the developed countries. And we also know that there is also a target of 0.7% of your gross national income as a target through which the OECD countries have promised to basically deliver. But the sad reality is that because of various economic compulsions or political compulsions, this lofty goal is rarely realized. And this is also one of the criticisms of ODA. But it is incontrovertible fact that ODA has also, if properly targeted, has brought about material welfare in the lives of millions of people. Now, over here, we also know that ODAs are also tied to the SDG goals, specifically SDG 10 and SDG 17. And SDG 10 and 17 also focuses on reducing income inequality within and among country members, recipient country members, and also SDG 17 focuses on coming up with an effective overarching framework through which, again, your ODAs can be implemented. Apart from this is the first aspect of ODA that our discussants will be talking about. And there's also the issue of preferential trade agreements, which has, and we know that the flow of ODA in recent times has been dwindling down, and now the loans are less concessional in nature, and by 2030 at least 2 billion people will lose out on getting ODAs because of their, again, the graduation in terms from the LDC or the low middle income country status. That too is an issue. Nowadays you have, again, aid for trade or technical assistance. This is the emphasis that is given more on the commercial aspects. And along with this, there's also a focus on preferential trade agreements. So again, preferential trade agreements is the way to go because countries have realized that if you want to basically convert a zero-sum game into a positive-sum game, countries will have to basically cooperate amongst themselves by reducing trade and tariff and non-tariff barriers. So South Asia as a whole, and even Bay of Bengal, many of the countries within the Bay of Bengal rim, also faces the twin dilemma of basically expanding trade through preferential trade agreements and also trying to come up in a post-ODA regime which is dwindling. With this, I've done my part on the moderator and appearing knowledgeable. So I'll go to the first speaker. I've just set the theme. So Ambassador Charles Whitley, over to you, because European Union does play a big role in terms of ODA. It's a multilateral organization. So your experience or your opinion on this, sir.
Thank you, Professor Abbasi. It's a great delight to be on this panel with so many distinguished speakers. I have to say, I don't purport to be an expert on all of these issues, but certainly I've learned quite a bit from my time in Bangladesh, both now and previously when I was posted here in 2005 to 2009. And maybe if I can start with a bit of EU propaganda. I mean, the EU is the largest provider of development and humanitarian assistance across the world, and we're proud of that. But when we put it in the perspective of meeting that 0.7% goal, the picture isn't that rosy. So we've all agreed that our member states and the EU should provide 0.7% by 2030, but to date only 4 EU member states have met that goal, so that leaves 23 who haven't. And of course the politics of overseas development aid are getting more complicated. You know, with the rise of populism in different countries, with the war in Ukraine, with the COVID pandemic, the need to spend on your own population and the popular appetite for development assistance seems to diminish. So there are many political angles in play with this, and it's always important to bear those in mind. But I think we have a good track record so far in South Asia in terms of development assistance. If I look at Bangladesh, in the last 5 years, the EU and its member states have dispersed around $2.3 billion, and that's 10% of all the ODA that Bangladesh has received. But if you look at that in terms of how important it is in the overall economic relationship, it has to be put in perspective. And Bangladesh, now in terms of GNI, about 1% of GNI is development assistance. If you look at other countries in the region, Sri Lanka, even in the present difficult circumstances, the latest figure I think is 0.28%, 0.28% of GNI. Pakistan, 0.79%. So these countries that have in the past relied on ODA, and I was looking at historical figures, I think in the 60s, 10% of Pakistan's GNI was ODA. That's evolved, and we're all evolving. Donors, or partners as we call them properly now, are evolving, but also recipient countries are evolving. And I think you're right to point to trade as a key consideration, and more particularly the trade regime that applies to countries like Bangladesh and in the region. So we all know that Bangladesh is graduating. This is a big story, 2026, with certainly in the EU context, a 3-year transition period to 2029. And that means a change in the prevailing trade conditions. And I want to link this back to ODA because when I was first posted in Bangladesh, in 2005 to 9, we did an enormous amount of funding of trade-related technical assistance. And the motivation for that was to try to spur the diversification of Bangladesh's export basket. So then, as now, over 80% I think of Bangladesh's exports were garments, and we were talking about jute being the golden fiber, but the fiber of the future. We were talking about pharmaceuticals, we were talking about leather and other sectors, and indeed in the intervening period, some of these sectors have emerged and are growing, and very impressively emerging. But I have to say, I don't think any of that is due to our ODA, our trade-related technical assistance. I think we were throwing money at an issue where what was needed was homegrown entrepreneurs to spot opportunities in foreign markets, and they didn't need European civil servants to come along with a bag of money to say, please diversify your exports. They can do it themselves. And that's what's happened, you know, with pharmaceuticals. Now Bangladesh is very well positioned to be a global leader on that, and that's not because of any ODA or trade-related technical assistance. So I think more and more partners in the region, as in development partners, are turning towards other ways of collaborating that also have an impact on growth, of course, trade being the main one. And I like the term curated growth because the question is, referring back to what I've just said about trade diversification, who's curating it? I don't think international partners should be curating growth. That's for governments to decide what their priorities are, their fiscal priorities, their employment priorities, their export priorities. That's a matter for each state. But what the EU and others should do is tailor our trade regimes to mutual benefit. And that's particularly the case when countries are graduating away from being least developed countries, where it's basically a blank check. And there are 4 LDCs still in the South Asian region, all of which benefit from our Everything But Arms scheme, so duty-free, quota-free access, and 2, Sri Lanka and Pakistan, that have moved to GSP+, which basically gives the same access to our markets, but with strings attached. And those strings are quite big strings. Ratification and implementation now of 32 international conventions in the social, environmental and labour fields and human rights fields with quite rigorous monitoring. And there are people who say, well, hold on a minute, that's a bit of a violation of sovereignty. You know, you're giving us favourable trading terms, but you're going to poke around in our political system, you're going to poke around in our human rights compliance, etc., etc. But that's how we see the price for continuing giving these benefits to non-LDCs. And I think it will be very interesting to see how Bangladesh navigates this, and how Bangladesh itself and other countries in the region who are in the GSP Plus system already curate their growth whilst taking account of this reality that it's not a blank check anymore, and to get access to the EU market you have to meet certain conditions. But I also think ODA has perhaps not really risen to the challenge in terms of support to infrastructure, and I think we all know that there's a big expected infrastructure gap, infrastructure funding gap. I think there's one estimate of $13 trillion by 2040 in terms of the infrastructure funding gap. And we see in countries like Bangladesh a very interesting mix of taking loans at favourable rates with countries like Japan, but also self-funding. I mean, we've all seen the success story of Padma Bridge and the fact that that was done largely without foreign support. But also, traditional development partners like the EU are now moving towards a more blended approach, where we mix loans with grants so that we too can leverage big amounts to support infrastructure, partly because it's in our own interest. We want to have infrastructure in place to support trade and to support trading relations, and I think my colleague from the EIB will speak in more detail on this. But I did want to give a name check to Global Gateway, which is the EU's new big global instrument for supporting infrastructure and other connectivity projects, and which is supposed to offer an alternative vision to some of the countries who are very much into infrastructure, and I might as well say Belt and Road here, but who have their own approach in terms of debt sustainability and in terms of conditions and in terms of who is brought in to run those projects. And again, it's not a blank check from the European Union, but I think it's a far more principled approach to infrastructure funding than perhaps some other partners. Have I done my 7 minutes now? Yes,
You're on your last one, sir.
Then I will stop there, and thank you for this opportunity.
Fantastic, fantastic. Round of applause for the ambassador. Very. This is especially so because he finished 1 minute ahead of time. So again, we all know that budget surplus comes in very handy. And again, from budget, we're moving to, again, one of our leading economists of the country. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Nazneen Ahmed, amongst the many hats that she wears. One is currently, again, she's the chief economist of UNDP Bangladesh. But Dr. Nazneen, again, your thoughts on, again, Bangladesh or South Asia or developing countries, how they are going to navigate basically in terms of dwindling ODA and a various sprouting of preferential trade agreements. Some even call it the spaghetti mix, because you have so many series of preferential trading agreements, and the emphasis on poverty alleviation and job creation. From your experience, ma'am, 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parvez Karim, and thanks to Charles for setting the tone. But let me begin with a bit on what is the outlook of ODA at the moment. So from UNDP Bangladesh, we have a research facility, and from our research facility, we have done a study on the outlook of ODA, and the main findings that we see from the study is that ODA was declining even before COVID. I mean, there was a declining trend. There was a little bit upsurge after COVID, but we all know that's for vaccine donation. And what we see in recent times with ODA is that it's mainly many refugee cost and humanitarian aid that has increased, and in many cases that increase with humanitarian aid is at the cost of reduction in ODA in other cases, in other countries, especially now with the Ukraine-Russia war. There has been some changes with the priorities as we see from the ODA flow. So generally what we are observing is increasing non-concessional loans, loans with higher interest rates, shorter maturity period, and also this is also not only for bilateral, also in the multilateral space where that we observe. And if we don't consider the humanitarian aid, then we see that the fall in the grants is ever larger. So there has been some changes in the ODA prioritization, and after the Ukraine-Russia war, we see the prioritization. In some cases, it's support for Ukrainian refugees, increased defense spending by the countries around those two countries, and also support for preparation to support Ukraine's reconstruction. So we have to bear in mind all these realities, and what does this reality tell us? So in summary, this reality tells us that in coming days, there is a very thin chance that ODA volumes to increase substantially to countries other than the countries need humanitarian support. And also, within this Ukrainian crisis, so there is a possibility that many ODA providing country will look at inward-looking policies, especially, we can see it in the Europe, because they have to take care of lots of domestic issues. So in that case, first, let me talk about what is it meant for Bangladesh. So in Bangladesh, we really have to think of our social sectors, because we get lots of support for our social sectors, education, health from the ODA, and we really have to think how we see the expenses that will be needed for these sectors in the coming years. And also, there comes the question of LDC graduation also, because Bangladesh will be graduating in 2026. As already Charles mentioned, that after that, the EBA and other facilities in the European market will continue for 3 more years, but then until now, there is no extension if we cannot achieve the GSP plus facilities. So with that in mind, ODA outlook globally and this LDC graduation, Bangladesh really needs to think of resource mobilization. And there comes the point that Mr. Parvez mentioned about what about the PTAs. As Bangladesh, we are talking a lot about PTAs now, because we see that after graduation, because we will no longer have these support measures, we have to look for agreements, preferential trading agreements, free trade agreements. But we have been talking about this for a long time, even at the South Asian context. But if we go back to our favorite SAFTA, and before that SAPTA, so preferential agreements and free agreements, we have experienced that even after having those agreements, there are lots of non-tariff, para-tariff barriers that actually acted as real barriers of free trade. So we really didn't get the flavor of free trade even after having those PTAs. So what to do now? If this is ongoing, so we have a recent PTA with Bhutan, and that has created some hope, and Bangladesh is negotiating PTAs with other countries, but we have to bear in mind several things. If we have non-tariff, para-tariff barriers in place, then actually in the name of PTAs and FTAs, it will not give its full benefit, one. And second, when we do the PTAs, if we look at the Vietnam's experience, now they're really thinking of so many PTAs there, and in some cases it's hurting their local industry. So we really, when we are going towards PTAs, we especially have to think of our small and medium enterprises, because when we do the trade agreements, when we talk about PTAs, FTAs, we always think about the big industries, the garments and the leather and other. Yes, they are important, but in terms of our enterprises, our entrepreneurs, 99% is small entrepreneurs, medium entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs. So we really have to think what we are doing when we are going for FTA. So it's not always like a win-win situation. So that's very important. Now with the South Asian context, the last 2 minutes I have, I want to say that when we are talking about FTAs, PTAs, and because we have seen that there are lots of other barriers there. So can we go beyond just trade agreements? Can we think of cooperation in terms of skills exchange. In many cases, India is ahead of different kinds of skills, online business, e-commerce and everything. Whether Bangladeshis can learn from there, whether we can have joint programs there, we can have joint programs for tourism where we can we can attract foreign direct investment if we have a joint tourism plan. We can, of course, our connectivity expansion initiatives should go on. We can think of how we can promote river tourism, media cooperation within media. I mean, these are the areas that will, that will show the bondage of people of this Bay of Bengal area, and that can create the strength where we can break the other barriers like non-tariff, para-tariff barriers, because people create this barrier. So in end, what I want to say that yes, with the ODA outlook, PTA can be a possible way out, but PTA is not always a full win-win picture, and that's why we have to think cooperation beyond this PTA, which is, I would say, that low-hanging fruit where we have our hearts for that, all the citizens of this whole region. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Round of applause for Dr. Razneet. We have set a record over here. The first to discuss is absolutely on time. So the central theme of her message is, again, bonding instead of bondage, trade creation instead of trade diversion. So again, moving on to this, we go to the land of the rising sun, and we have with ourselves Yoshikazu Kato, Research Fellow, Rakuten Securities Economy Research Institute, Japan. Welcome, sir. And again, just before, just to set the mode, because again, you are from Japan, obviously, and Japan is known for its very generous disbursement of ODA, and I believe in 2016 or 2017, there was also a popular manga character known as ODA Man, which basically popularized the concept of ODA and also how to basically keep overseas Japanese safe after a series of unfortunate incidents. So Japan is known for its commitment for ODA, and again, does it in a very quiet manner. So sir, the next 8 minutes, the Japanese experience in terms of ODA at around the developing countries, especially in South Asia. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for organizer having me. And it's a great opportunity to exchange our thoughts. And today, let me talk about why Bangladesh or ODA matters for Japan. And I think this is quite important for Japan diplomacy and economy. And last month, I had a chance to visit Nagoya. Maybe somebody knows Nagoya, where the Toyota headquarters located in. And I had a chance to talk with some businessmen who are engaged in China, because everyone knows China has been the biggest trading partner for Japan. But when I asked them what's going on, your business on China, China's economy is shrinking, China's population is shrinking, and some country risks, and they propose their new business plan. They say we have been converting some production base to Bangladesh in terms of China Plus One theory. China Plus One, this is quite famous in Japan. A lot of books, a lot of discussion. Maybe because of China's geopolitical risk, or China's economy, or maybe Xi Jinping's administration, economically and politically. That's why, and they say now, Bangladesh or India, South Asia is more, getting more important, in terms of its demography, and to some extent embracing democracy, or make a point of human rights increasingly. So, and more importantly, a lot of pro-Japan nations and society. And actually, it's the first time to get to Bangladesh for me, but I can feel a very strong bond, between Japan and Bangladesh. So I think this is a very important precondition for Japan's government and businessmen to do anything. So in this sense, I think now Bangladesh, and maybe as well as South Asia, is getting more important in terms of China Plus One for Japan's economy and diplomacy. And I can feel Bangladesh people is very kind, diligent, energetic, and this is my first impression to Bangladesh. And Japan thinks this country is embracing democracy and moderate Muslim country, and geopolitically quite important in terms of regional stability. So I think you know, I cannot say yes, or I cannot make a point of everything, but I think this country is increasingly important. And let me introduce some data. Until the end of last year, there are 324 Japanese firms in Bangladesh. 324 Japanese firms, and around 1,000 Japanese citizens in Bangladesh. And they are doing business in manufacturing, logistics, textile, and trading, basically. And last year, Japan's FDI, foreign direct investment to Bangladesh, was roughly $100 million US. So I think now, from the business side, Bangladesh is becoming more important and I think quite potential. And most importantly, this country is quite young, unlike Japan. Japan is the biggest and most serious aging society in the world. But looking at South Asia, Bangladesh and India, and unlike China, China is becoming more aging right now. So in this sense, I think Bangladesh is quite important. And in terms of ODA, and this is the, you know, to some extent, it's a government issue. And why ODA matters for Japanese government in Bangladesh? I think basically three objectives for Japan. One is we hope pushing Bangladesh to become middle-income country. And this is quite important, number one. And number two, facilitate Bangladesh with removing poverty. And this is also important. And third, pushing Bangladesh to become sustainable, fair economic growth based on the respect of SDGs. And this is quite, you know, applicable with Japan's, you know, diplomacy and Japan's, you know, future development model. So maybe some audience know Japan's ODA project, like Dhaka MRT, or was Matabari Port, thermal power plant, or COVID combat, you know, vaccine. Or even we, instead of Bangladesh Central Bank, we are producing some currency for Bangladesh. So these are very important piece of Japanese ODA to Bangladesh. And so this is, I think, quite potential mutual project for both of the countries. And, you know, again, economically speaking, now, you know, over the last couple of years, although some, you know, affected by or undermined by COVID, but Bangladesh relatively maintained high growth rate, like 6% of economic growth, while attracting more attention as a potential production base, and you know, and maybe as a production base, Bangladesh for Japan maybe is following China and Vietnam, and quite important market as consumption. So all of these pieces are becoming very significant for Japan's both government and firms. So, and we hope Japan can promote and commit to Bangladesh development, because Japan needs trade. Japan needs business for economy, our own economic growth, and more importantly, peaceful and stable regional environment. This is quite important because Japan is, you know, island. So we need to rely on these external relations. And as I said before, we can feel Bangladesh embraces democracy, human rights, and freedom, and try to become more sustainable, free country, and relatively moderate in terms of religion. And this is quite important for Japan. It is a very important foundation to communicate with each other. So conclusively, I think Japan's assistance, ODA, to Bangladesh will lead to the strengthening of cooperative relations in the international arena through the enhanced of global mutual bilateral relations supported by pro-Japan, very strong pro-Japan sentiment in this country. This is quite important. So I think I specialize China, so I've been working on Chinese politics and economy, but now we are looking at some problems on China, and maybe China is becoming more powerful, and even, you know, the US-China competition, and under this very complicated geopolitical circumstances, I think countries like Japan, Bangladesh, maybe of course including India, Pakistan, these countries are quite important to, you know, stabilize the region, and this is the foundation for regional stability and economic growth beyond the borders. So overall, I think it is quite potential for both Japan and Bangladesh to promote our relationship through ODA. And I truly hope every country, including EU or China, India, we could have fair and free competition in Bangladesh, including ODA from government side or business side. So this is quite potential for Bangladesh, the future of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoshikazu Kazu, sir. Absolutely, again, this is a hat trick we have scored. So again, 3 expert discussants finishing ahead of time. This you can only do when you have perfect command over the language and the subject. So again, if I summarize the theme, again, Japan obviously is a valuable partner of Bangladesh in terms of promoting sustainable economic growth, poverty eradication, and promoting peace and stability in the region. But also, I appreciate the fact that you have also acknowledged that China has become an important factor, and Japan has a very interesting relationship with China, not necessarily one of conflict, but there is a growing interdependence between this, and that also you have framed it in. Thank you, sir. Moving the discussion on, now for taking in a bit of a local flavor, and we have again a very versatile man with us, and I will not even dare to give him his introduction, because again we have Amir Khosrow Mohammad Chaudhry, former Commerce Minister, but I would say that's a very poor introduction of him. A person very well versed in the subject that we'll be talking about. Sir, from you we would like to, again, you're free to again elaborate on any part of the issue. Again, the role that you see in Bangladesh in its future in terms of, again, declining ODA, or the way or how to attract higher streams of FDI, or which way to go about in terms of PTA, if you talk about the national interest, sir. So, your opinion, sir. Thank you. 8 minutes.
Because politicians don't speak for 8 minutes. You have to stop me. I first of all thank CGS for creating this opportunity, bringing me from the street program into a very cozy atmosphere of a 5-star hotel. So a very refreshing change for me, particularly what is happening in the country in recent political development. The subject is very close to my heart for the obvious reason that it relates to so much to trade. And my slogan always has been, start with, that more trade than aid. Then the next slogan was aid for trade. Because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, unless you can energize your own economy through trade and investment, it doesn't matter how much aid you bring into your country, the economy does not go to your expectation. It does not grow to your expectation. So, under the current ODA shrinking, the very pertinent question that arises, how does Bangladesh go about addressing it? And as I say that, in order to do that, first of all, you have to invest in the right places and strike a balance between your infrastructure and social issues and human development, particularly in mind for the 4th industrial revolution that is facing us, looking into, actually it's pointing towards the face of Bangladesh, that where does Bangladesh go with that? So the critical decision on investment, be it from the aid from internal sources, has to be looked at creating proper human development in the country. And for that, where do you invest? You have to invest in education. You have to education in health. You have to education in skilling your population, upskilling, reskilling your population. And enough investment has to go into that. Secondly, the political economy of the country has to be, what does it look like for a country like Bangladesh, a political economy? How much of it will consider the income gap that is taking place in the country? Is the money getting concentrated into the hands of 1 or 2% of Bangladeshis and creating a huge gap, income gap, between the various sections of the people? Yeah, are the projects that we are taking our priorities for the country and the people of Bangladesh? Or are the projects being considered on benefiting or rent-seeking by depriving the country and the citizens? So, if we look at the mega projects that we have been told about for quite some time, that how much of it actually was necessary for the country, and at what cost these projects were carried out, and how does it affect the economy of the country right now? There has been talk about hundreds of billions of dollars laundered out of the country in the name of development. So, at the end of the day, return on your investment on mega projects, how does it reflect on your economy, and how does it benefit the citizens and the country's economy? So, I think it is time that with ODA going down, shrinking, we have to focus on the areas of investment where the highest return can be achieved. And as I said, for the trade and investment, for the development of trade and investment, the critical decision has to be taken with the internal resources and the aid that comes in. So Bangladesh is facing a very difficult time. With the PTA, I have to thank Charles is here. European Union's got off with a very good start of everything but arms, preferential access into European Union. Actually, that helped Bangladesh garment industry to grow to the level that it is today. And subsequently, we got PTA into Canada and some other countries. Actually, it quadrupled the normal export of Bangladesh. Otherwise, if it was not for PTA, the export of garment industry, the product and garment and textile would not have been where we are today. So, when we talk about aid for trade, capacity building within Bangladesh is also very important. And this critical investment in the form of aid that comes into Bangladesh has to look at very critically as to how to develop the skill of the country and human resource development. Because currently the kind of investment that goes into education and health is so little, considering the requirement of the human development that we need in the country. It is less than 1% of GDP, of the budget of GDP. It needs to reach at least 5%. On education, on health, on both, I think our investment should reach about 5%. And that investment will see the real change and transformation in human development in Bangladesh. because we have a very small window of demographic dividend. We have already wasted, I think, good many years on demographic dividend by not investing enough on human development. And the window is not open for a long time. So we have very little time. I think the priorities for investment in Bangladesh right now, okay, I'm finishing. The highest priority should be given on human development, and critical investment should go into education, health, and human development. I think that will make the real transformational change that we are looking for in the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You have actually finished just on time, sir. Thank you again. So again,
oh, did I?
Yes,
oh, okay.
sir. So there's a quartet. So again, if I can even attempt to summarize such a, again, this is such as the evil task of a moderator, Herculean task. But again, Mr. Amir Khosrow has correctly identified certain issues where he has basically spoken his philosophy that again, trade rather than aid, and again, he has focused on certain issues where again Bangladesh's economy should focus on. He has focused on the political economy of the political economy and the areas in which the emphasis should be there. There should be again capacity building for the fourth industrial revolution, which will not come until and unless proper investment is carried out in human capital formation, and human capital formation will not come out until and unless there's basic investment which is done both qualitatively and quantitatively in terms of education and healthcare sector. So he has outlined the issues on basically in the terms of national interest, and there is no political affiliation of it, because again Bangladesh as a whole of a country of 174 million, if it has to benefit, it has to basically consider what are the obstacles it faces and how it can overtake them. Thank you, sir. Now over on to the last but not the least, we have Devor Kunk, EU and International Affairs, Political Economy Analysis. So, what we would like to know from you, again, you'd feel free to express on any aspect, but again, the EU's political economy philosophy in terms of engagement with South Asia as a whole. And because, again, we are discussing about Bangladesh, but again, we are also representing South Asia over as a whole. So, over to you, 8 minutes.
Thanks a lot, Parvez. Indeed, I work for the European Investment Bank Group, which is the bank of the European Union, so an EU body. And until this year, the EIB Group consisted of 2 members, the EIB European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund, DIF, where I work, while a 3rd member was added to the group in 2022. This is the EIB Global as a virtual subsidiary. The total annual disbursements of the EIB are 68 billion euro, of which 90% is within EU27, but 10%, or around 7 billion, are outside EU, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, as well as in the EU immediate neighborhood. And this is managed by EIB Global. That's why I wanted to emphasize this new member of our family, which is the one most relevant for you. The EIB Group, for its financing both inside and outside EU, follows the policy guidance of the European Commission, as well as of the European External Action Service. And then the European Commission follows the logic of what works well within EU27, then let's apply it, let's copy it outside EU. And one such good example is the recently announced Global Gateway that the ambassador mentioned in the opening speech. So you might know that many times the feedback from the developing world towards us in the EU and in the international financial institutions is you guys like to finance a lot in our countries the so-called capacity building and advisory, which are indeed important as the speaker mentioned. But there is always the emphasis that first we need roads, railways, bridges, electricity, and China finances this. So therefore the EU responded, heard the message and responded with the Global Gateway initiative. And I wanted to let you know a bit more how this evolution took place. So firstly, the European Commission sets up its, and these are the acronyms 10T and 10E. 10T stands for Trans-European Networks in Transport, and 10E for the Trans-European Networks in Energy. Effectively, these are maps of key roads, key railways, key gas pipelines, electricity transmission lines, again, in EU 27. These are done by technocrats in the European Commission, so in principle without political influence. Not political projects, but the ones which connect the key economic centers, the key centers of activity in a country. So the 27 member states of the Union might not agree easily among themselves, but so it helps to have the European Commission to do this for them. So once these were set up on the EU 27 level, then the maps were used as a filter for the flowing of EU money for financing of projects. So only those projects which are on the list, which are the key importance, those are the ones which get the EU financing. And they were then initially transposed to the Western Balkans, so outside the EU, to those countries which are destined to have the EU membership. And once it worked well within the context of the connectivity agenda and Berlin process in the Western Balkans, they were transposed to the Eastern neighborhood and the Middle East, North Africa region. And they are now also being used in a different way for the global gateway. So the emphasis is on prioritization of the key projects. So the Commission, again, sets the agenda, and then the European financial institutions finance this policy or political agenda. These are the EIB Global, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, but more so here in South Asia, or evenly so, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. So I mention all of this for two reasons. Firstly, that the needs are indeed vast, and that there isn't enough money. And then for the European Union and all of us, we need to, together with the beneficiary countries, prioritize these investments. So we use these notions of the key corridors as a guidance, as a filter for those investments. Connecting key economic centers, not building political projects. Secondly, and this was also emphasized by the ambassador, we do not focus only on grants. Rather, we focus much on a transition from grants towards financial instruments and towards the blending of grants with the loans for construction. The grants, as you know, are free money, and even in the EU 27, the member states prefer to receive the free money, the money that doesn't need to be repaid. But in the case of grants, €1 of grants produces €1 of investment only. The financial instruments and budgetary guarantees, they create leverage in which €1 enables at least several euros of investments depending on the instrument. And this is not just for big infra, which is important, but it's evenly so for private sector and entrepreneurship activities. For example, guarantees which we distribute via commercial banks, they enable loans to the end beneficiary which have some benefits. They either have longer repayment rates, or they do not require collateral, or they have lower interest rates. A good example is in agriculture. You're a farmer, you need to buy a tractor, but you don't have a collateral, so no bank is going to give you the loan. Maybe you have some land, but the bank doesn't want to deal with the land. And then, with the guarantee of the European Commission, the bank is ready to give a loan without farmer having a collateral, having something to give in return. Or there can be lower interest rates. So it enables the business to flow without necessarily using grants. Similarly, we support investments via investment funds, which then do equity investments themselves, in which then they cover the whole development of a company, from a startup up to a scale-up. As mentioned, this money within financial instruments, budgetary guarantees, is not free, but it enables investments that otherwise would not have happened by providing better conditions. It leverages, unlocks additional money, in particular from the private sector. And it enables, in the cases of investment funds, the money to revolve. So as the money is repaid, then the investment funds has that money again to reinvest it. Concretely, for outside EU, the Commission has set up something called the EFSD+. That's an acronym which stands for the European Fund for Sustainable Development. This is a budgetary guarantee which supports specifically the financial instruments mentioned above, as well as being a tool for blending, again, the grants, which are then a sweetener to unlock the loans of the international financial institutions, as well as the private sector. And this is how the global gateway would be financed, via EFSD. For information, the FSD Plus makes available around 40 billion in guarantee capacity. It's over a 7-year period, 2021 to 2027. That's the budgetary period of the European Commission, always 7 years. And then with the private sector and this leverage effect, it would amount to around 135 billion worth of total investments in a variety of global gateway sectors. So to conclude, it is important to set up the priorities. Geographically, for us in the European Union, it is the region immediately next to Europe, the Balkans, the neighborhood east, neighborhood south. Why? Because this is where the migrants come from, and we tackle the causes of migration at source. However, there are selected regions globally, such as indeed South Asia, Bangladesh, which are also a geographical priority. In terms of sectors, what is our focus is certainly green and digital, as well as health. Green means also sustainable transport, it means energy efficiency, it means renewables. And the EU budget is accordingly split in this 21 to 27 period as 40% green, 20% digital, and remaining for the other sectors.
Apologies. Round of applause. I did not want to close the gate on the global gateway, but then again, time is not our ally. But again, thank you, Ms. Deverkonk, because you took a lot of time and then painstakingly tried to basically demystify the rather Byzantine operations and the financing of European Investment Bank and again global gateway. So again, and it's always a challenge to basically trying to break down technical subject for layman audience. But thank you. We appreciate the effort. We are actually out of time, but because there's a Q&A session for everything, can we have 2 minutes for Q&A? Can we just have 2 minutes? Yes. We'll just take 2 questions and then throw it to the audience. So, but please, again, if you take the question, sir, please, again, the questions should be, again, a question, again, because, again, 30 seconds for each question, sir, because, again, we have to follow the rule of law, at least on the stage. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
The second last question of the 3-day-long program, sir. So that's a historic question. Compliments to all the speakers. The question is, going from the English saying that there's no breakfast is free, no lunch is free, no cup of tea is free. So all the aid, all the ODA assistance that comes, we have to assume maybe there is some tag with it. We haven't heard much of it. If it is possible to say any unpleasantness that has occurred with either Bangladesh or any other developing countries, any difficulties you faced, and how do you overcome that? It's a question based on assumption, not knowing what exactly is happening from a citizen. I am a retired soldier, now in politics, following the trail of Mr. Amir Khosrow Muhammad Chowdhury. Thank you, sir.
For keeping the question short. We'll take the last question of the Bay of Bengal Conference session. So, any show of hands? Sir. Over to the gentleman in the very bright blue khaki shirt. I really like your color, sir. Yes. So we'll get a mic to you. We'll get a mic. And that's the last question of the conference.
I'm really privileged to have the last word or last question for the conference, coming from Africa. My name is Emmanuel, I'm from Ghana. And like you rightly said, ODAs are shrinking over the last few years. A few years ago, a popular writer, economist, Dambisa Moyo, wrote a book on dead aid. So I want to ask the panel, do you think that countries within the within South Asia, within the Bay of Bengal can transition without ODAs? Thank you very much.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for a very insightful question. To all the speakers, 30 seconds each. You can choose to answer any one aspect of it. One is on the tide aid concept, and another one is can countries go without aid? So anyone, sir. 30 seconds each to each of the speakers. And apologies for restraining your time.
The countries can go with aid and go without aid, depending on the kind of environment the country has. Is it a democracy? Do you have the human rights? Do you have the good governance? Or you have an authoritarian ruler sitting and breathing down on your neck, whereby no development is possible. Any development that shows is only a temporary gain, but in the long run, what Bangladesh is facing, what we are seeing in Bangladesh is the ultimate result that the money is laundered out of the country. Economy in the true sense is sinking, and the bottom line is the people of the country are being deprived. And one set of people getting rich, one set of people getting rich and richer, and the rest of the citizens are suffering, cannot make two ends meet at the end of the day.
Thank you.
I'll be very brief.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it answers both the question. One thing is, when we talk about ODA, ODA is not grant anymore. It's mostly, loan. So it's like how hard we can negotiate. That brings the result. So ODA is not, it's not coming as a like grant, so that there will be lots of conditionalities attached to it. But we have, because it's loan, so it depends on what will be the interest rate, how long will be the maturity period, and then we can negotiate hard. So we have to improve our negotiating skills and get the best deal. Thank you.
Over to you, sir. 30 seconds.
I agree there's no such thing as a free lunch. I think one example I would give is we've moved back towards giving budget sector support, where we pour a big amount of money into different budgets in Bangladesh and elsewhere. But of course, if you're doing that, you have to be assured that there's proper financial management, so then there are strings attached. But what I would say is there's a reason why we changed our DG in Brussels that manages our ODA from the name of Development Cooperation to International Partnerships, because now we're a lot better at listening to our partners and doing eye-to-eye development assistance that is a good fit for the country and a good fit for the EU. So, thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly, I think from Japanese perspective, providing ODA is creating an opportunity. It's an investment. So in this sense, I think friendship and bond do matter. So this is not that one way. This is a mutual understanding and win-win mechanism, I think. Thank you.
I will answer the question of Emmanuel on the debt trap, and with that conclude with an example, right? The key is fiscal space. What is fiscal space? That's the amount of taxes that you collect, the amount of money that a country have. That money is a scarce resource, and you want to think twice where you're going to put that money in. We have the example potentially of Sri Lanka, which put it into some project, some port. They cannot return the money. So are you going to blame the Chinese who gave the loan? Yes, you should, but you should even more so point the finger to the government who invested money in a political project. I'll give you an example from the Balkans. I worked on the countries in the Balkans. We had a similar example of a fisherman's village in which a Minister of Transport wanted to build a port. It's a sovereign decision of a country to do something like that. We, as a financier in the European Union, European Commission, decided not to co-finance that project, again, because it wasn't on the maps, because it's not a priority. And if you have scarce resources, in order not to get into a debt trap, you need to focus on the priorities.
Thank you very much. And with that, apologies again. There are a lot of people beaming with questions. We've already stayed 2 or 3 minutes over time. So let me summarize this in 30 seconds. ODA is a thing of the past, or it's transforming. And nowadays, if you want to receive ODA, you'll also be expecting to give your pound of flesh's worth. So the ties, there is obviously the strings attached. And we need to go for internal resource mobilization and capacity building and fiscal space, and also working closely with our partners, both old and new, because in a changing geopolitical climate, we cannot afford to isolate anybody. And we need to look to our own strengths, and we must not compromise on our national sovereignty and self-respect. Thank you. With this,
এটা ইয়া করে দিয়েছি তুমি সেটিং করে দিও লাস্টে দিয়ে দিও
So now it's time for the closing session, and for that session I would like to welcome to the podium Mr. Jillur Rahman. Mr. Jillur Rahman is the Executive Director of Center for Governance Studies and also the Chair of Bay of Bengal Conversation, and he is also a successful TV host of the most popular television show of Bangladesh named Tritiyo Matra. So let's welcome Mr. Jillur Rahman with a big round of applause. Thank you.
No, I think, thank you. Thank you, Tamit. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Namaskar and very good morning. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, after 2.5 days of sustained dialogue, we now find ourselves at the end of our first ever international conference. And I must remark, what an adventure it has been. In our inaugural, we started by showcasing how Bangladesh presents a unique opportunity. We now have the chance to run an experiment on sustainable development in the fastest growing third world country in the world. I truly believe in the potential of Bangladesh. I believe Bangladesh has the opportunity to be the most vocal advocate of regional coordination, effective climate action, and a role model of inclusive growth. By putting together this event, our small, independent think tank has also managed to pull off one of the most significant experiments in track to diplomacy to have ever occurred in Bangladesh. I know the model still needs a lot of work, but I believe in the potential. I'm truly proud to have been able to host all the different conversations and see how remarkably the speakers and participants interacted. The name of the event was Bay of Bengal Conversation. The goal was to have the conversation which are not being had, the conversations which are being buried and forgotten, conversations that have stalled, conversations deemed too complex, and conversations that absolutely need to be had in an open and unfiltered environment. Only through conversation and sustained dialogue can we get anything done without having to resort to violence and cruelty. As I look back at all the wonderful discussions we had, I find myself thoroughly moved by the remarkable insights and the unfiltered passion that the esteemed speakers poured into each and every plenary topic. You were asked to boil down some of the most complex issues of our times in just a few statements, sometimes lasting less than 5 minutes. I hope you will trust me when I say, if I had the capacity, I would carry on these conversations for weeks. In all our conversations, we have attempted to the best of our ability to bring in diverse voices and designed our panels to facilitate unique perspectives from all around the world. Many of the people who are most keen on joining the conversations could not make it due to problems acquiring visas, and we have truly felt their absence. I have also tried to bring these most important discussions to be heard by those who otherwise would never have such an opportunity. We tried our best to accommodate participants from a diverse array of audience. We have 32 delegates from some of the most marginalized communities in Bangladesh, including those who are stigmatized in our society for their gender, religion, their ethnic identity, and those who are differently able from the rest of us. We also made room for 15-year politicians to engage the panel and learn about the complexities and challenges of the world they are about to face head-on. For all of this, my most profound gratitude goes to all our distinguished speakers who flew here from so far away and graced us with their presence at the multitudes of conversations. Many of you already know how long I have been trying to make this event come true. And the true fact that you were here with me these last few days means the world to me. I would like to thank once again our loyal partners who stuck with us through thick and thin. Due to partners like USAID, USF IP Compass, World Fish, the Asia Foundation, UNDP Bangladesh, Frederick Ebert Stiftung Bangladesh, and many, many others, we have managed to turn this dream into a reality. I would like to thank the Pan-Pacific Sonargan for their world-class hospitality and service. And last but not least, I want to thank my Bay of Bengal Conversation team, who all performed so magnificently behind the scenes and with such few resources. They worked many sleepless nights to make sure the event went to plan and resolved all issues that turned up with grace and wit. And as a final word, I'd like to state that this conversation was never planned to be a one-off conference. The plan was always to hold sustained dialogue. The insights we gathered in Bay of Bengal Conversation 2022 will be compiled into a comprehensive report, and we plan to follow up on the findings in the next Bay of Bengal Conversation, which, if all goes well, will be held on 7, 8, 9 October next year. Now that the experiment is a success, we will hope to expand the scope of Bay of Bengal Conversation next year into a track-to-tip conference, which will lead to actual multilateral policy making. I hope you all will join us again in October next year. And with that, I'd like to conclude Bay of Bengal Conversation 2022. Thank you all very much. Now, I will call each member of team Bay of Bengal Conversation to join me on the stage, in front of the stage actually, for a photo session. Dr. Manjur Ahmed Chaudhary, Chairman of the Center for Governance Studies, they join me. আমার সামনে দাঁড়াই আমরা তাহলে মঞ্জুর ভাই না না একদম সামনে তাহলে ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড আসবে না আব্দুল আওয়াল সবুজ ডক্টর আব্দুল্লাহ আল মামুন আব্দুল্লাহ আল জাফরি আবু আল সাইদ ব্যারিস্টার আসাদ হাবিব বুইয়া আপন জহির আরমান মিয়া অয়নাংশ মৈত্র বাহাউদ্দিন আহমেদ দোলা দাস এমিল মাইকেল বোল্টেরো ফামিদা হক ফারজানা আওলাদ মৃদুলা ফাতিমা তানজিম মাহবুবুর রহমান মাহতাবুদ্দিন চৌধুরী মুখলেসুর রহমান, প্রদীপ কুমার শীল, রোমানুদ্দিন, সাদিয়া তাসনিম, সঞ্জয় দেবনাথ, শ্রাবণী আক্তার দীক্ষিত, সুরত রানা রুশমি, সুবীর দাস, and Thain Shiu Kyo. I'm coming.
Without permission of the House, I am just proposing to give a standing ovation to this team. May we give a standing ovation to the excellent team that we have. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We join all of us.
Thank you so much, sir. Please join us for tea and coffee at the ballroom foyer. Thank you. এটা ফাইলটা আমার লাগবে, হ্যাঁ? ফাইলটা তোমার কাছে থাকুক, আমার লাগবে।